So welcome everybody, welcome everybody. What we're doing is this is Rishi and Rishi's dad Ajay, and our goal today is Rishi and I watch the All In podcast together.
And we're just going to simplify it down, give you the bare bones, and make it a lot more easier to process.
Absolutely. And we're going to at the same time raise some questions about some of the important items too.
We're going to numb it all down so you can understand, and then we're also going to complex it a little bit, see what about something else. We're going to give you everything you need to know, and then plus we're going to do some speculation and get to know even more.
Absolutely. Hope you enjoy it. And as you enjoy it, please feel free to like and subscribe. And, if we get more subscribers, people like it,
then we'll keep on posting more videos.
We'll keep on posting more videos. What we're going to do is take something very, very amazing, which is the All In podcast.
Yep.
And what you guys are seeing in the background, right? And what we do in our family is we look at the All In podcast and we try to make sense of it, wherein I try to make sure that you are educated on the All In podcast.
Yeah, it's a great thing, funny, it keeps your attention.
Absolutely. And something that we find which is a little difficult for you is a lot of things are new in this for you.
Yeah, it's like advanced, as I would say.
It's a little bit advanced.
Yeah.
So our goal today is to make sure we go through this with you, and you've noted some questions.
Yeah.
And we answer those questions and we give more clarity so that people across the world can make a lot more sense of the advanced stuff that these four guys end up saying.
Yeah.
I mean, they're amazing. What they do is super amazing. I know for a fact that we've made decisions based on what we've heard from Chamath. We've made decisions based on what we've heard from all three of them.
Yeah, Jason from both Davids, Friedberg, and Sachs.
Yes, and all those have worked out very good for us, right?
Yeah, all of their information is very valuable.
All right, so let's start watching this together. So we're looking at this first section of their podcast, which is about Davos, and they're going to make fun of Davos and sing about it. Now, what is your take? Like, this is perhaps the first time, or did you know about Davos from before?
Okay, yeah, so singing part's coming up. So essentially, I don't know that much about the World Economic Forum. This is like kind of a first to me, but I understand that it's pretty mocked. Like, it turned from a great thing, like a status of being elite, to just a mockery at this point.
So there's a place called Davos in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Where he's so funny. Where World Economic Forum happens every year, and it's very expensive and very elitist, right? Because it's very expensive. So as JCal was talking about, they charge 40,000 a year just to have your presence there for 3-4 days, right? I'm guessing it's for 3-4 days, but I can Google that for you. And led by this guy called Klaus Schwab, if that's how you pronounce it. He's a German economist and engineer. And but it's become very elitist in nature, that they bring only the senior most politicians, really chiefs of banks and stuff like that. A lot of times you'll find Bill Gates sitting in the front row listening to all of them. And the feeling that everybody else walks out with is that these guys as elitists are creating a world order and dictating a global policy. Having said that, I personally think that JCal should not make as much fun of World Economic Forum, WEF, because to some aspect it competes with the All In conference, right? So he's very good at poking fun, and I can barely stop my laughter listening to him. But the fact is that they are competitors, right? To some extent, right? And to a smaller extent. I mean, this is what they do is very niche, and what Davos does is very broad with global implications. But yes, I think it's a little bit of a, a little bit of a thing towards Davos is very good that they're doing because it's become too elitist and it's not really solving a purpose. But this year, one of the purposes that got solved is they had Argentinian president coming there and talking, Milei, and and he gave a very, very, very important speech. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
And
pretty sure it's coming up somewhere here.
yes, yes, that's the next topic.
So funny how he decided to just sing the intro this time. Not the
Yes.
intro, but the schedule.
Yeah, they sang their schedule to poke fun at the fact that the arts there demonstrated were not, you know, classical arts. They were,
Just
they felt like they were made up. Yeah.
yeah. There's their whole. They had their whole They're spreading the COVID thing. As Sack said, they're way past COVID.
Yeah, they were past COVID. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the key takeaway here, and we can forward a little bit of this, for our audience. We don't need to take them through all of this.
Yeah.
And if you don't watch it, you should watch it. It's a really, really amazing podcast.
Yep, this is currently episode 162 of the All In Podcast.
Yes. So we're gonna forward all the way over to a little bit of understanding of Milei's speech, and so what Milei's speech is talking about is the fact that we are doing collectivism. Okay? And I think, what's your opinion about collectivism? And then I'll bring in my thoughts around it.
I don't have that much of an opinion on it. It's kind of more of a new thing to me.
Okay.
So I would prefer if you would explain your thoughts first. I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding collectivism.
Gotcha. So governance per se is a very, very complex matter, right?
Yeah.
When we hear about politics and governance, it's all about who gets what and when. Right? So we all collectively, exactly. So we all collectively pool our taxes, and then we go ahead and distribute those taxes, presumably based on need. Right? But what happens in an advanced democracy, and this is my opinion of why government fail. So most governments over 100 a year, 150 year, 200, 300 year period fail. Why they fail is because the people underneath the government who figure out how to optimize for their own greed.
Yep.
Okay, so initially the theory is very good. Let's collect tax from everybody and let's distribute that tax based on need. If we need hospitals, let's build hospitals. If we need roads, let's build roads.
Yep, eventually, at first it started because the government was in need of money during, I think, wartime.
Taxation started, very true. Taxation started during war times.
We're back in war times, taxes have increased. But the thing is, they never removed it. They just said, okay, we're going to make this a fact of life. Now they've increased taxes, and now they're going to probably say, no, let's make this level of taxes a fact of life.
I agree. I agree. In fact, we should probably do another video on economics per se, because that itself is a very complicated issue in terms of what is the ideal level for taxation, what is the ideal level for inflation, where does money come in, and those are, and how money makes us run around when it's an artificial construct in itself. So those are separate items that we should touch one day. Today, from a perspective of collectivism, the concept is that in collectivism, we are supposed to work together for a common good. But very soon, life becomes easier for people, and they forget the pains, and then they don't want to work towards a common good. They want to optimize their own greed. Okay? So people will be less worried about whether we should have hospitals, and more worried about that I should be able to extract the maximum out of people for all medical needs.
That explains a lot about the whole world, because of a book I've read, The Force Turning. If anyone hasn't read it,
Neil
it's
Howe.
Neil Howe, The Force Turning, amazing book. Explains a lot about stuff. We're going to bring in some other sources other than All In to help our understanding. So, as Neil Howe said in The Fourth Turning, there's cycles to how the economy works. There's the cycle we are in right now, started in 2008, the crisis. Then we'll have the prosperity era, and then there'll be some unraveling. And then I forgot what the third one's called, but then that's just kind of the gateway. As
Absolutely, it keeps moving in those cycles, right?
It starts bad, right, and then it slowly goes up. But after we persevere through the war, something shocking happens that stops the era, and then it slowly starts unraveling down to a crisis.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what happens is, as we were on the topic of hospitals, people would say hospitals are a necessity and thereby they should be allowed to charge more.
Yes.
And we know from our personal example of your grandparent Nanaji getting a heart surgery, is at that very same time he was getting a heart surgery in India, there was another friend of mine getting a heart surgery in Texas. Both were very identical open heart operations, and Nanaji in India paid 250,000 rupees.
Which, if nobody knows, 1 rupee is rough. Actually, no, that would be...
Compare it to US dollars, because the other
$1 US is roughly 60, 70 rupees.
Yeah, perhaps even 80 now.
Yeah.
We haven't converted it in a bit. So, if I just pull up calculator to do a rough calculation, okay, I'm going to move my mouse here, and 250,000 INR to USD, that's about $3,000.
3,000, that
right?
is surprisingly
And another
cheap.
friend of mine, and we'll hold it here, okay? So we want to talk about this
chart, yeah.
And we're right, actually. Look, hospital services right there on top.
Yeah.
So I think ideal point to talk about it. So he paid $3,007.52 as per today's conversion for his surgery, because he was a government servant in India, so he got covered by insurance and all of that stuff. So he got really good pricing.
Yes.
Another friend of mine who was in Texas at that time getting surgery, he got bills close to $700,000. And
so essentially a house.
Essentially a house, yeah. And ended up paying almost $250,000 after negotiating and settling and all that stuff, right? And now let's look at open heart surgery from a perspective of what it is and how long it takes. All right. So you cut open the heart, and it's called a bypass surgery. You cut open the heart, and you take a big vein from your leg. So you cut open the leg longitudinally. You take a vein out, a small piece of it, right? The veins in the heart, that are the arteries in the heart that are blocked, you create a bypass to them, right? And then you stitch it back. All right.
All it is just essentially reconnecting wires.
It's very similar to reconnecting wires in the human body, right? Wires and tubes in the human body. So if we, let's go ahead and ask GPT, how long is an average heart surgery and average open heart surgery? So it's kind of stuck. It's trying to do its thing. It's stuck on, can take anywhere from 3 to 6 hours. All right.
But yeah, depending on the condition, it might take a bit longer.
So now assume that you have 6 hours of a theater, an operating theater. You have 6 hours of doctors, right? Assume 2 to 3 doctors and 2 to 3 nurses supporting you. And that's the sum total of open heart surgery.
Yeah, you should, like, all the equipment, that's going to be minuscule considering the salaries. It's also going to pay us off over multiple
times, right? So $300,000 to $350,000 is considered a decent doctor salary, and when we consider on an hourly basis, that comes down to, let's say, $175 an hour. Okay.
175 times the 5-ish doctors,
three doctors,
3 doctors,
3 nurses. Nurses would be at $65 an hour.
Yep.
Okay. So a blended figure of doctors and nurses put together would be $120 an hour, right?
Times that by 6
and 6. So 120 into 36.
Hours. Yep.
Right?
So 36 times that.
Yeah, so 720 into 6 again. Right?
So, but even just looking at the rough number before you even calculate
4,500.
Yeah, that's nowhere close to 200,000 after negotiations.
Yeah, and 700,000 without negotiations, right?
Yeah.
So they
like you shouldn't even have to negotiate.
Absolutely. So you could take anything for that matter and make it scarce, and throttle the availability of that to public, right? Luxury items, classic luxury items, right? So now, what can I charge for a glass of water? Let's say water is not available at all, right? I could charge you $100,000 for this much of water too, right? And you will pay. If you're going to die of thirst, you would rather pay, right? So I think
here in Canada, you have multiple means of getting water. If someone charged you even $10 for that, you still would say just no.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is that the price of a commodity is controlled by demand and supply.
Yes.
Right? So if I stop graduating doctors and if I throttle the supply, the demand would be there. And in fact, I can bring up the demand more by feeding more garbage to people. Okay, so I can create bad food, allow more chemicals in food, allow more preservatives in food and stuff like that. And that will up the demand. And I can throttle the supply, and all of a sudden I can charge obscene amounts. Right? If I do the same with water, I could charge $100,000 for a glass of water too.
Yeah, you could just start putting salt in everything. Salt will dehydrate you, make you want water, and essentially the equivalent of junk food in healthcare is the equivalent of salt in water.
Quite true. So coming back to this, you could take any one thing, and it's very easy to manage the demand and supply for it and charge any obscene price for it. And the role of the government is to kind of keep a lid on things like these. Because if they don't, then all of these shoots grow up, which are like weeds, right? They quickly grow,
and by the time you try to take them off, they regrow.
But you've lost your. So a government needs to think of a country as their own farming land, right? And if they let all of these weeds go up, it's very good for that capitalist who's taking that weed up. Weeds grow really fast. They hijack everything from the ecosystem. So very, very good for the capitalist who's taking it up. But then it's very bad for the government as such, because they start losing control over their own country.
Then the government decided, if we can't do anything about this, we'll join it.
And that's what happens in the US government, where a lot of US politicians are actually trading on insider knowledge, and they're making their money. And then very soon we realize that the lead hedge fund managers in the United States, and I'll not name names here, but you know who I'm referring to, right? Simply the largest hedge fund, right? We don't want to get sued. But the fact is that they have been open in terms of talking about how we're in late stage capitalism, how empires die. And the fact is that they've already hedged their bets, where most of their investments and their and their future is in China already. Right? It's very smart and incredibly smart of them, but one aspect of looking at it is also rats deserting a sinking ship.
Yeah.
Right? So if you and I are the government, it's in our interest to make sure that weeds don't grow. They'll grow too fast, but weeds don't grow. The whole economy grows as such, and we are able to cultivate our land nicely. Okay. Now, this is a great example of in United States, the government has actually worked reverse. And what I mean is the Chinese government or responsible long-term governments, let's put it that way, right? I don't know which country has it and which doesn't. But
yeah, but we have some guesses, but no hard facts or anything.
no hard facts. But at this point, it seems like, there's some governments which are making 30-year, 50-year policies and plans. So they have long-term governance in mind. Singapore is such great example. But United States government realized, and I think this was about 1970. So I wish this was a map that went before before gold was before United States dollar was no longer hedged to gold. So I would love to see how this maps out from before that. And if anybody in our audience knows how to get this data, not from 1998, but way back from, like, say, 1930s,
Yeah, then
we'll love to
hear about it.
we'll love to hear about that. Okay?
So all we need to do is just ignore all the lines except for hospital services, because that's the one we're going to talk about right now.
Not really. I mean, we should talk about more, but the
But
sheer
right
fact
now.
is that 1970 is when the United States government said, I'm hedging myself off the dollar standard. Okay? And when they did that, remember, Nixon said, as a temporary policy, we're going to abolish converting United States dollars to gold.
Yeah.
But something that you know about government,
There is nothing as permanent as a temporary government program.
as a temporary government program.
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain, yeah. Now, what happened here is that they got literally free money. Right? They could print as much as they like, and literally just keep printing to infinity till they run out of the entire credit of United States.
The thing is, they had plans to demolish the whole gold standard thing way before they were printing. They got into greed by printing more money than gold, and then decided if we abolish the gold, then we won't get in trouble.
Exactly, and we should talk about gold in one of our future podcasts.
Yeah.
The key thing about gold that people miss is there are still gold bugs that are hoping that gold will come up. But what they do fail to understand is that 2016, I believe, is when there was a very small article, just one thing on Reuters that flashed, and nobody ever talked about it after that, is that United States government gave temporary permission to the gold exchange in London to be able to print more paper gold temporarily than the amount of gold available to them.
Again, nothing as permanent as a temporary
As a
government
temporary
program.
government program. And so at this point, the estimates are that there is about 180 times more paper gold in circulation than actual gold. Right? Remember, again, demand and supply. I increase the supply to infinity, the price will never go up. Right? So even if you come up and say, hey, Dad, the S&P 500 is very, very risky, and which it is, right? Our PE ratios are through the roof. It's come down a little bit, but the average time frame of a company on S&P 500 index is 16 years. The PE ratios fluctuate anywhere between 23 to 28. Okay, so but the fact of the matter is that if we look at that happening, we we find that they could keep printing as much paper gold as possible. And if you come to me and say there is a risk, what do I do about that risk? There's nothing you can do. You hedge onto gold. Gold's price is not going to go up because there's infinite supply. Okay? In fact, silver, people keep talking about it. Silver never went up because this was allowed on silver much before then it became active on gold. Okay? And so, yeah. Now, look at this. Government could print as much as they wanted, okay? And they subsidized your education, and college fee went through the roof. In fact, on a recent vacation, I was talking to a couple from New Jersey, and they were talking about the fact that they had to get their kids educated at Princeton, and the fees was $90,000 a year.
Yeah, from 1998 all the way up to now, in that very short period of time, it's already gone up 175%.
Yes.
Which is more than doubled.
Which is more than double, right? And so they talked about the fact that their fees were $90,000 per child. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I got educated in India, my fees were barely $500 per year, right? So I walked out with no student debt, which allowed me to build a life and do things that I wanted to do. Gives you a certain amount of flexibility, knowing that you could chase your passion, you could do what you want, but
because you don't have a need to make money at that period of time.
You do have a
you have a smaller need.
You have a smaller need. You have a desire to make money, and that allows you to
do what you want, do what you want, and have fun essentially.
Have fun essentially, right? Okay, so we do understand that average hourly earnings, I believe, is the median.
Right? Yeah, it probably should be higher considering how much healthcare just went through the roof.
Yes. So my belief here is this is CPI, which is CPI stands for Consumer Price Index. So it's a basket of goods that they put, but everybody plays tricks, okay? So you remember what they say about statistics? There are lies, and there are Hitler's damn lies, and then there are statistics. Okay, so statistics lie left, right, and center. Now, CPI is Consumer Price Index, but the central bank controls what they put in the basket for CPI, right? And usually they play tricks like when old cars, used cars, were very, very expensive, they put used cars into the CPI basket, knowing very well that they're temporarily up because the production was log jammed and there weren't so many getting produced. So temporarily the used car valuations had gone up, and then they will come down, which they've now come down. But 2 years ago, during COVID, during the global pandemic, when there were supply chain issues, they were not able to produce cars, and the used cars had gone up in value.
Because if you were in a very bad situation and you had a pretty bad car at the time of COVID, you would have to get a new one, but new ones weren't able, so you would have to get a used car.
We would have to get a used car, right? So right after the COVID lockdowns opened up, a lot of used cars were being sold, and that's the time we sold both of our used cars too, because the valuation was really good. So we said, this is the time to get rid of them. And but so assume that your central banks will play some games on you. Okay, they will go ahead and boost up the value of cars at a they'll add the anything that goes up, they'll say, oh, let's add this to our CPI basket. And at the same time, anything that goes down, they'll be like, it's already gone down, we can now take it out, because then it'll go up, it'll show as if our CPI has gone up, right? So consumer price index is something that they're able to manage and mitigate that particular way. What my belief is that CPI, or consumer price index, which reflects inflation in a particular economy, is always a little bit manipulated and thereby runs a little bit lower than true inflation numbers. So if the federal government or the central bank wants to track it to, and guys, if you're in the United States and you're listening to us, we may end up saying stuff which is a little bit more Canadian in origin. So we'll say central bank, but for you, it's your Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Right.
This applies to, like, it will sound more natural to people in Canada. If you're in the US, just take whatever we say and Americanify it.
Americanize it, yeah. Americanify it. That's fine too. And so my belief is that average hourly earnings are perhaps the best indicator for inflation in a particular economy, because they dictate the buying value, right? So to be able to figure out true inflation, you have to again find the common path between buyers and sellers, right? Demand and supply. So I think this one kind of dictates the available demand. Okay? And so I believe that this is a better indicator for inflation per se than CPI. But having said that, I may stand incorrect also. Any economist, feel free to talk about it. you may actually, a casual observer may say that the CPI is right between the tops and the bottoms. So it's kind of like the central path. But I don't think that's true. What we spend on hospital services and college tuitions and fees and Medicare services and housing and food and beverage is a lot larger than what we spend on computer software or toys or television, right? So even though these things are going down, our percentage spend on these items is much lower. So if you average that out, the our average hourly earnings might actually be the median.
Yeah, so I don't think the average hourly earnings do any justice to hospital services. It's only gone up 75%, and
So I'll tell
hospital
you,
services have gone up 225%.
yes, and I don't think this graph is correct as well.
It might be a bit off, a little bit more exaggeration, but it's
No, I think it's a little less exaggerated.
understatement. Okay.
It's an understatement because it's crazy how much hospital services cost in the United States. It's just crazy. There is there are hundreds and thousands of medical bankruptcies that happen every year. So it's a system that's completely gone rogue and completely gone wild. And with FDA kind of dancing around with round robin people moving in and out, the quality of food and the quality of produce that you get, you actually find that more Americans are on an average sick with chronic diseases, which leads to lower per capita productivity of the country. And that is why anybody who's looked at the Chinese workforce and the American workforce would clearly tell you that people in China, on an average, are far more intelligent and far more productive and far more energetic. Okay?
I don't think it's actually an exaggeration. I just feel if you go back more, then you'll see more of the previous graph. Because here, if you look, everything starts on zero, because at that very back, it's increases, not adding the current price.
I guess so.
So if you move it back, hospital services could go up to 300%, 400% even. But the thing I'm very confused about is why is it linear? Like, I would have expected some of this stuff to be slightly exponential in growth, consumed because of how the whole Moore's Law thing.
Yeah, but Moore's law brought in the price of televisions down in almost a steeper curve before they normalized, right?
What I feel happened is it went linear down and then it started flatlining as Moore's Law became more unstable.
I don't think so. I think what happened here is that if you take the quality of television that was here,
Yes.
which was a 480p, that television you will pretty much get it for free at this point,
Yeah.
right? So
That's why it's so close to negative 100%. Negative 100% means nothing.
Means nothing. So what happened is, as this was going to drop and it was going to drop exponentially, they brought in 1080 HD, 720 HD, and so on. Okay, so that perhaps made the difference. And then there are 4K televisions and large screen televisions and 8K televisions and stuff like that. Right. All right. So let's move forward. You have any other questions on this?
Let's see. Yeah, I have one more question, and that is not actually a question, more of just a statement. If you look at cars, household furniture, and apparel, it's not moved that much. But if you look at the whole hourly earnings, hospital service, college tuition and fee, textbooks, childcare and nursery, all of those things that have gone up, minus the earnings and the housing and the food and beverage and stuff, everything is controlled by the government.
Yes, so these are all things that the government pays for, right?
Yeah, and if you
I
look,
was talking to somebody about doing a PhD in education, and they said, you know what, just do it in Canada because the government pays for it because it's research oriented. I looked at the price. The degree is going to cost me $90,000 or so. It's about $1,500 per credit hour, and I have to do 60 credit hours. But I don't care what it costs me because the government's going to pay for it, right? But if I really had to pay for it from my pocket, then I am sure there'll be other people with options who would say, hey, it's a research-based degree, so you are going to do most of the work your own selves. We have to provide you a professor resource that you can tap into as needed, and you could do your viva to them, you could do your dissertation, you could kind of talk to them about stuff that you need to do, and that would perhaps be $10,000, $15,000 rather than $90,000. Mm-hmm. There's a very famous professor in New York. He teaches at Metropolitan New York University, and he says the university charges $50,000 an hour for him and a projector.
But if you look, so very funny how much that is. But if you look on the other side of the spectrum, it's all free market.
And free market capitalism is, we can term it as free market capitalism, but my guess is that free market capitalism is the least capitalistic of the outcomes. Let me explain. And I think Chamath says it very nicely, where Chamath says that in a free market capitalistic society, the profits are all competed away. Right? So people will sell it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper till absolutely ruins the game for everybody. Now, does not happen in tech, because in tech, a new tech comes in, you can take advantage of it for a while before it becomes a commodity item.
Instead of cheapening everything, you try to advance your research and how you can make it better. So technology doesn't get competed away, it gets competed further.
And that could have potentially happened in the medical industry too,
but we decided not to.
But we decided not to, because we decided to just throw a lot of money at it rather than getting them to do the work.
It's just here's a load of money, and now you have to make your own money.
Absolutely. I mean, they didn't even tell them to make their own money. The worst thing that happens, and that happens in education too, you are going to study, but the government's going to pay for it. Public schools, you're going to go to study, but the province pays for it in case of Canada. In medical, you're going to get the services, but the insurance company pays for it. Wherever there's a disconnect between the payer and the receiver of services, then there's a lot of opportunity for lack of competition and lack of enhancement, right? Because if you come to me and you need this service, I don't care about you. I care about getting paid by the insurance company. Okay, so that's why education as such does not care about the child per se. They care about the parents' perception of whether the kid is getting educated, and the perception of the politicians who write the checks. Right? Now imagine if I take education and I say everything has to be measured and rewarded based on what it does for the subject in question. Okay? So if I get you into a school where the school only gets paid when you go out in the world and you become successful, right?
Then they'll do their best to make you good instead of get money.
Absolutely. So if I tell them Rishi will go ahead and rank his happiness every year, okay, and once he ranks his happiness every year, then based on if his happiness is 5-star out of 5-star, and he pays $20,000 in taxes, you get a quarter of those taxes, right? But if his happiness is 2 out of 5, you get a lower percentage of it. Okay? Then the school will start working with you, saying, who are you, Rishi, really? What is your mind? What is the bend of your mind? How do I make sure you're happy and productive in your life? Right? Then they will look into you and say, are you going to be the next Elon Musk? Are you going to be the next David Copperfield? They will go ahead and look at you and say, who can I make this person into? Because that's how I get paid. Right? But nobody cares about that today because they don't need to. Right? It's better to go ahead and just put the veneer, the ambience of the fact that we're doing the right thing. And as long as the politicians are happy, they keep writing the checks. Right? And as long as the parents are clueless about what's happening, then they don't complain too much.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're done with this topic. We can move on to the airline monopoly.
Absolutely. So for everybody watching it with us or watching our opinion on it, let's move to 2156. This is the segue into Boeing's monopoly.
Yep. If you're watching this on YouTube, I don't know if there's any other platforms they post on. There will be timestamps that will help divide the video into blocks. We're just moving on to the Boeing block.
What is your opinion on the Boeing saga, right? The whole Boeing saga is what happened with the 737 MAX. And for a long time, we tried to avoid 737s as the plague.
Because,
in fact, the joke in my office was that it's not an aircraft, it's a missile. So,
because of the thing, if it's stalling, you point it down. If it's stalling, it's a missile now.
It's a missile.
It's a plane till it stalls, and then it's a missile. Yep. So I have a few questions.
Okay.
First, I'm pretty sure Tamat said, a duopoly is a monopoly.
A duopoly starts behaving very soon as a monopoly.
Yeah, there's Boeing and Airbus, and now it's become just a monopoly.
Yeah, because it becomes like you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Nobody is really very interested in becoming competitive.
Nobody has to gnaw their way up. They're already there. It's kind of just cooperation instead of competition.
It's a competition, yeah.
But the thing is,
do you know when true competition comes in?
I feel like it's when you have enough people at a different varying skill level. If everyone's at the bottom, then everyone's going to help each other get up and then destroy each other.
My take is, based on what I've seen in the world, if you have more than five competitors on it, is when you will start getting competition, because at that point you can't have collusion anymore. Right? I was just interviewing a lawyer that we were looking at hiring, and he said that when they would develop a technology, some of the large TV manufacturers, one guy would develop the technology, they license it to everybody. Okay, so they will sign a non-disclosure agreement to sit down and do the negotiations, right? And those negotiations are classically called collusion, so it's not allowed under law. So they will sign non-disclosures and sit down and do those negotiations. Then after they finish the negotiations and they've decided how much somebody would pay to get license and continue keep paying for it, then they will sign a second non-disclosure saying this negotiation never happened. Right?
So first non-disclosure is like
to enter into the negotiations.
The first one is just like you can't say anything about this, and the second one is this never happened.
This never happened.
So then why didn't they just start with the this never happened?
So
okay, yeah, perfect pause time. You rewind it just a little bit. That is what happened.
Yes, this was an Air Alaska flight. It was a very new Boeing, just delivered 3 months ago.
Yeah, Boeing 37 MAX 8.
MAX
8
9,
or 9?
9. MAX 9. Yeah, because this happened when we were in South America, in Central America, and then we immediately checked because all the 9s got grounded, but our plane back was 737 MAX 8.
Yeah, the second I saw the pamphlet, I'm like, okay, we're screwed.
So, yeah, but that's the last time that we booked that. We're not going to book 737s.
If we end up getting a flight with a 737, we're going to find every single available one that does not include 737. May that even be one flight.
So what do you think went wrong here? And what do you think would have been other future options had people been honest and hardworking?
So I feel like they just didn't bother attaching the door on properly. They just wanted to get done with it quickly. I feel like their 4 opinions on it was that the bolts were loose. I feel like they just didn't bother actually caring about the bolts, and they just, put them in, twirled it around, got done with it, instead of actually just tightening it to the max.
Yes. My take is that when you see JCal, JCal has, what you see on top is do the work. Right?
It's not very.
It's not visible here, but it's right on top. It says do the work, right?
Yeah, if you're watching this, it's probably just going to appear as an orange phase or something. That's
But
just a
sometimes you'll be able
sign.
to read it, right?
Sometimes. I don't know if you will be able to read at this distance, but
I think what happens with most people and civilizations overall is we get lazy. And once we get lazy, we find shortcuts to make money.
yeah, that's exactly what Boeing's done. There's no competition, so that means there's no way they're going to fail. So they're just going to pump everything into making money.
Now, if this was not a monopolistic or a duopolistic situation, then guess what would have happened?
Probably Boeing would be like, we have to improve, we have to create greater airlines, we have to make sure all the other airlines want our planes.
Let me also tell you that the design of 737 is 60 years old.
Yeah, they just decided not to improve.
They didn't need to.
Yeah, they just.
Right?
And no one else was going to come in there and try to destroy it.
And now they have 787, which is a phenomenal aircraft, right? But they decide to keep it a lot more expensive than 737.
Because they're just like 737s are more profitable.
Right? So, but if this was a more competitive business, guess what would happen?
It would probably become like technology. There would just be competition. Because if you look at the smartphone industry, how many competitors are there? There's Apple, there's Google, the main titans. There's Xiaomi, there's Samsung, there's countless other ones, but those are the four I can remember.
Yes. And do you find anybody selling old model phones? No, they don't.
No. If you look on the Google website while we were buying a phone, and I remember seeing it, they had two options. Pixel 7, Pixel 6. Nothing else.
Exactly.
Absolutely nothing else. What is Boeing's perspective on this? We will sell every single plane that is profitable. Even if it's like 100 years old at that point, it's profitable. I don't even know if Boeing existed.
But the reason 100-year-old is profitable is because of lack of competition.
Yeah.
If there was competition, 100-year-old would never be profitable.
Yes.
Right? If there were no smartphones and we were still in the rotary phone era, somebody would be selling the touch key phone, somebody would be selling rotary. And for a while, you notice that was happening because the new one wasn't, significantly better. Plus, there was lack of real competition. Now there's competition, so people do not.
It started with Apple. There was no competition. Then competition arose.
And North America does that where they only create 2 to 3 players of a time. And anytime you have less than 5 market players, in fact, even 5 market players or less than 5, you do not have a competitive scenario. Right? So they on purpose create less.
But if you can have less than 5 under the one circumstance that they're all very greedy. If they're all trying to completely kill the other, then it's gonna end up like that.
Good idea.
Because I cannot recall more than 4 people in the smartphone industry, which is Apple, Google, Xiaomi, and Samsung. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know any other ones.
No, there was Motorola, which got bought over.
Motorola, okay,
then
yeah.
There was LG. LG
there
used to make
was, but now it's just, I don't know. I don't even know.
I haven't seen them around in a while.
All I know LG for is their monitors, computers, and somehow dishwashers.
And there are quite a lot of Chinese brands that we don't know of, but China has good,
yeah, like there's the whole American press. There's a whole, I wouldn't say American, but there's a whole West side, which we have. Most of it's been competed out, and now it's died down. Apple hasn't actually gotten that good of a phone at this point. The 15, if there's any Apple fans out there, I'm sorry, but the 15 is not that good of a phone.
So here are Chinese manufacturers, right?
Yeah,
mainland China-based companies: Haier, Hisense, Huawei, LETV, Lenovo. Lenovo makes a Vibe lineup of phones. Meizu,
nice.
Oppo. Oppo is a nice phone. They sell them in India. OnePlus, really nice phones too. Realme, TCL, Vivo, Xiaomi, ZTE,
Xiaomi, yeah.
Xiaomi, ZTE, in Phoenix Mobile, Techno, itel, Vivo, Xiaomi,
Are we
it was
anywhere
getting
near those?
repeated, Poco, Black Shark, um,
Blackberry, now Black Shark.
Coolpad, and Honor, and Hotway. And then there's some international companies which are the Google, Apple, LG, Samsung. But you notice, like these
There's
guys
like
have
20.
20 manufacturers of their own. That
Like, even if you look at the Chinese industry, what do we have as our one service provider? Amazon. They have Alibaba, like Poduo, whatever that was.
and this is how the European industry died too, right? Europeans had Ericsson and Nokia, right? And Europe tends to do that too. They're very
The only thing we know Nokia for is flip phones and being pretty much indestructible.
Nokia's are pretty indestructible, or were pretty indestructible, yeah.
You know, if someone says that's like a Nokia, they're not talking about it being like a phone or something. It's just Nokia is not regarded as a phone company anymore. It's just regarded for being indestructible.
Yeah, like a brick.
Yeah.
So, coming back to this, so if you have true competition, then I think one of the things that happens is that you develop an industry truly.
Yes,
Right?
like
Other than that, what's happening is you're basically letting some vultures eat all the meat that you throw out. Today, here's something that you'll find very funny, and hold your thought for a second. The one seat on an aircraft ends up costing an average of $180,000. If you take the whole price of the aircraft divided by the number of seats, that's the thing. And I want to check that for you. I want to fact check that for you as we talk about it.
Yeah, I've seen someone just buy the seats individually, like minus the whole aircraft around it thing. It was pretty cheap, but it makes kind of sense considering price of aircraft divided by amount of seats equals price per seat.
Yes. So let's go ahead and do a cost of 737 MAX 8. And 737 MAX 8 is 121.9 million, 138 million or so in 2022.
And yeah, the only reason they created Maxes at all was for the one fact that airlines wanted more. So Boeing decided if they want it, we can charge more.
And they were able to. So the whole 737 saga happened where they said, we're doing 787s as our new ones, and our 787s don't have as much production capacity because we're doing carbon fiber. And what Boeing traditionally would do is, because again, it's a monopoly, it's a duopoly, it'll actually not invest its own money in building its facilities. It doesn't need to. So it would actually go to its Congress people and say, you want me to put a plant in Alabama? Sure, no problem, right? Let it cost an arm and a leg. I'll put a plant in Alabama and I'll provide jobs there so that people from that region vote you in. Okay, so you now give me funding to open that plant. Okay. So that's why Boeing routinely flies large components from here and there, and by the time they put the plane together, it's horribly expensive. So just to give the viewers
For the one fact that whatever they can, squeeze some money out of.
Yes. So 787, which is the newer one. So 737 is 120 to 140 million, and 787, which is the newer one, is about 250 to 300 million. Okay. And they have three models too, the 787-8, -9, and -10. So let's look at the median one, and that's 300 million. Now let's go ahead and see what is the seating capacity in that, right? So we're going to say 787 9 seating configuration. So you can have 40 business class, 14 premium economy, 192 economy seats. So holistically, you're putting like 250 seats in it, and you're costing $300 million. So 250 seats, $300 million. You do the math. It's close to. So I was completely wrong. It's close to $1 million per seat, right? A little bit more than $1 million, right? Like 2, 3, I think.
Yeah,
2, 3. So Yeah.
The 300K does not matter when we're at the scale of 1 million.
But can you imagine? I can get a beautiful car with an engine. You can even buy a Maybach, right? With an engine, with all the luxury for people to sit in, right? For $300,000, and you could get or 200,000 US, right? These are US prices, and you can get an amazingly beautiful car for $100,000, which is top of the line luxury. So your average seat price is $25,000 in that car.
At that point, your crappy old economy seat is worth the amount of a Rolls Royce.
Not even Rolls Royce. Rolls Royce are not that expensive either.
I
So
mean, just imagine taking a Rolls Royce, stacking on a Rolls Royce, and doing that till you fill up like a small parking lot.
it's amazing. It's amazing. So this is what competition does to you, right? It brings down. So today, the pilots union think that they are doing, and if you know, by the way, you guys should watch this. The pilots union thinks that they have to fight for themselves because there wouldn't be enough jobs, right? So they're fighting tooth and nail to say, don't put this automation in the planes, don't put that automation in the planes. But what they forget is there are 200 million drivers in the United States.
But I have a feeling. Don't pilots do practically nothing till there's an emergency?
Yes, most often it's autopilot. But what I'm trying to get to is that the pilots union fails to understand the point that if the aircraft, if this one seat that you see here is not 1.2 million, and instead of that, that one seat is, let's say, $100,000, $200,000, and trust me, it would not be more than that if you just count the COGS, the cost of goods in it, right? So if you take
It
the
would not
true,
even be 100,000. I'm guessing it would be 100.
no. I mean, the average seat with avionics and engines and all of that averaged out over the 300 seats in that aircraft, 250 seats in that aircraft.
Like the whole aircraft averaged out by using COGS instead of actual retail price
Actual
would be
retail
that,
price,
yeah.
right? So if you go to Elon Musk, for example, and you say, listen, first principles, let's build the aircraft, right? What is his cost going to be? Okay? He's going to say, my engineers are going to build the engine, my engineers are going to build the shell, and by the way, instead of building the shell with aluminum, we can probably build it with steel, right? Whatever, like they
They'll
will
call it probably Aviation X.
aviation X, right?
No, or just AirX.
AirX. Yeah, perhaps Elon should think about it, right?
I
X Air
mean,
or
just take
AirX,
Starship, flip it on its side, and you're good.
and you're good. Yeah. So, so if he was to kind of completely redesign it, the cost of an aircraft may drop order of magnitude.
The thing why Elon has such good products is because he doesn't care about money, he cares about what looks nice, what feels nice, what he thinks is nice.
And how it evolves the
Yeah.
industry, right? So,
Yeah, so Elon's not as greedy. He's more of just like, how can I benefit this to myself? And if I'm benefiting myself, might as well benefit the entire industry.
might as well benefit the entire planet, and you automatically benefit. And I love the fact that he thinks from first principles. So he's not compounding his thinking onto other people's thinking. He's basically going and saying, "Let's me think from
He's
ground
just
up."
rewriting the book.
Rewriting the book. So, so pilots union, I guess you guys have been taken for a ride by your own politicians who think it's easier to keep monopolies and duopolies and keep issuing money and keep getting the votes. But instead, if they go ahead and have a competitive environment, then the plane, instead of costing $300 million, would probably cost $10 million. Okay?
It would be both competed upwards and competed to nothing, which would reduce prices, increase models, and be overall insanely beneficial.
Insanely beneficial. At that point,
Yeah, that's
you will require so many more jobs as pilots, because today, I'm not gonna fly to Dominican or something like that, just because it's not worth doing it. It's very expensive.
and
But if there are 40 companies out there producing airplanes, and some are producing hydrogen airplanes and some are producing electric airplanes, then all of a sudden, my weekend trip's going to be, hey, you want to see the aurora borealis? Okay, let's go up north, let's have a weekend trip, and then let's come back. right? So it's going to actually create more jobs for the pilots.
Yeah, but I don't remember who said it. I don't know if it was Jason or Chamath. Probably. You would expect it to come from Chamath, but I'm pretty sure it's from Jason. And he was saying about about like a program where you could get a loan and start your own aviation company just to help Boeing and Airbus improve. You would be just there as friendly competition. I mean, it would severely help the entire thing, but as we know, Chamath, it's most likely true. Jason, most likely false. And why would the government fund that? It's going to lose money. It does not care about how well the people are.
Yes.
So
at this
very
point,
good idea. I don't think it's going to happen, though.
at this point, it seems like even the Chinese airplanes are fairly expensive. The C919, the price stands today at 108 million. But knowing how China works,
It will soon be 50.
it'll soon be 50. Yeah. So the sorry, your mic's gone upside down. It's gone upside down. You want to flip it out? Yeah. Perfect. So it'll soon be 50, and we have a feeling that may even drop beyond that too, because China believes in competition, and I just hope that their government does the right thing, where how they let 20 people build mobile phones, they let 20 people build airplanes, and thereby airplanes will become incredibly cheap. Now, today, the risk in letting that happen is that you will have a lot of CO2 emissions, but I think this would be the right stepping stone to take the entire planet into a hydrogen-based economy and into
Yeah, because eventually they'll be competed into. Fuels are too expensive.
Fuels are too expensive, and I think we're naturally running out of crude now. So the fuel is too expensive, and hydrogen would be cheaper, electricity would be cheaper, and that will automatically lead to a transition. Okay?
Yes, so
But it'll lead to a better planet, a planet where people are flying very often, visiting Iceland, going to see the caves in Nicaragua, right? Like,
but
it'll make a better planet.
yeah, overall competition is healthy. But we should probably wrap this up. We have a lot to cover in the video. So I think we move on to streaming platforms.
Yes. So, what do you think
Nope,
about
this is
Adam
WeWork.
Newman, right? WeWork, not WeWork anymore. It's Flow now. So that's the next topic, guys. It's about Adam Newman and the fact
Founder
that
of WeWork, Flow, what I don't remember which one was before WeWork.
yeah. What's your opinion?
So my opinion is he had a great idea. He put it into process, but he got way too greedy, and he decided to buy way too much. And as Sachs was saying, he's pretty much going to be the most important person on this one, considering how much he knows about real estate.
Yeah, David Sachs would be the kind of key person to listen to on this particular matter.
Yep, he said that he was pretty dumb by getting it at floating rate debt instead of just static debt. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Because he could have gotten it at like 2 to 3% interest rate instead of like 7 to 8 or whatever it is now.
Yes, yes. So you're 100% right. And so, your take is that Adam Newman got greedy and made a mistake?
Not greedy and made a mistake. He was greedy and ended up doing too much in too short of a period of time. Instead of making a mistake, he was slowly making one mistake upon another mistake upon another mistake till it became too much. Like
It compounded is what
compounded,
you're
yes.
saying. So my take on this is a little bit different. My take is that Adam Newman is an incredibly smart and aggressive person. And I think I really, really value smart and aggressive people. There's just so few of them in this world. As Paul Graham says, it's the fierce nerds who change. And he is clearly a fierce nerd. Now, there was a mistake that he ended up making, and that mistake was that he did not see inflation coming. And you and I talked about this, right? Inflation dictates interest rates.
Yes.
Because if I am printing money, my commodity is money. I got to balance demand and supply on money, right? How do I know when to keep opening the tap and when to stop it. Inflation. It tells me whether I keep the tap open. If I let it inflate, the product that I'm producing becomes worthless, which is money, right? So if you think of it from that perspective, again, it's first principles, and you put yourselves into the shoes of that person, and you say, how would they think about it, and what would they do? Then it's very clear that the key thing that you need to worry about from a central banker perspective is when their commodity, which is money, when their product, which is money, starts losing value, which happens due to inflation, then they will tighten the supply of it so that there's more demand and less supply. Everything's about demand and supply, right?
Yep.
So he failed to understand that aspect. Maybe he did not have the right guidance. Now, we sold off most of our assets knowing that that's coming.
Yep, we sold off the old house, the 48 bearing, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So we sold off all of those. We can't talk about a lot of them on the podcast. It's
but we sold pretty much all of them.
Yes, because we could see that tsunami of inflation, a wall of inflation coming, and then we could see the banks will be left with no alternative but to raise interest rates. And so I think Adam Neumann did not have the right advisors there. Okay. But the second best thing that he can do now is sit down with the banks and renegotiate. Right? And when he sits down with the banks and renegotiates, he may incur short-term losses, but he may end up covering it long-term. Right? And what do you think about the concept of flow, right? Concept of having a slightly better quality of living and you being able to build your renter credit or tenant credit in a particular company and then be able to move across their other properties more seamlessly.
Yeah, like it would be pretty nice. It could be the next Google with the whole.
Maybe not the next Google, but the next Airbnb, let's say.
The next Airbnb, yeah.
Yeah.
About building credit and stuff. Very interesting and also could be very nice for users. People could want to go on a vacation and they'd see that there's a low amount, that some things are in very low availability.
So Flow could actually start developing properties which are a little bit more premium, as what you're saying, in nature, maybe almost have a resort-like feel, and then you can rent them out to people who are willing to pay that slight premium and live there, as well as be able to rent them out to vacationers who want slightly longer term vacations, right? Like nomads. I'm staying there for 2-3 months. After that, I'm going to stay in Hawaii for 2-3 months. After that, I'm going to go to Bali, Indonesia, and stay for 2-3 months. Those kind of people.
Yep, because it could be very useful for people considering how they could rent something, gain some interest, gain some points, and then be regarded as a better person to rent off to.
Makes sense.
That it could give you benefits. It could be like a frequent flyer program on land. Could be a frequent visitor program, a frequent renter program.
Most airlines literally run a bank of their own through the frequent flyer programs.
Yeah, it's just
bundling. Okay, so do you think you and I have a slightly different opinion?
We have a slightly different opinion, but we both agree that he made
a mistake.
He made a mistake. You believe he made one mistake. I believe he made a few mistakes. But we can both agree he ignored the financials.
Agreed. I think he is a very good CEO. He's very energetic.
He's a very good CEO, but he's not that good of a CFO.
He's not. He needs to hire the right CFOs, and he needs to. I don't know him personally, so I don't know if people don't speak up to him because they think that they will get fired or something, and they're scared, or he just does not have good people. But it is either of these two things. So I think uh, he should hire the right people, and he should allow them the capability to speak up to him. And almost what I tell people every day, right? Nobody ever got fired by telling me where I'm wrong.
They get fired by not doing.
Yeah. I'm like, the only time you get fired is by repeatedly being stupid and not doing your work, right? So only by being stupid and by being lazy will you get fired, and that to repeatedly being lazy and repeatedly being stupid. But other than that, you're not getting fired. And I check my ego at the door, like I check my coat at the door. So come up to me, tell me anything you want to say, and I'm not getting offended by that. And people do take advantage of that. Um, all right. So Adam Newman, we have a good, we have a good idea about it. Now, they also talked about towards here that Benchmark Capital did invest $300 million in his flow, and the opinion was that it's Chamat's opinion was that Benchmark Capital did that because they make management fees out of it, right? Now, do you understand that aspect of it clearly?
Benchmark Capital is a VC company, right?
It's a VC company, yes.
Okay, yeah, then I probably heard about it. Yep, okay. Yeah, I feel that makes sense how it would. I don't know how to explain it, but it makes sense why Benchmark Capital would do that.
But do you think that they went beyond their mandate of investing only in tech companies, and they raised this venture capital saying, I'm investing in tech companies, and because tech companies take small chunks of money, so they were able to say, I need 2 and 20, which, for the audience, 2% is the management fees, and a lot of funds charge them for the whole duration of the fund, let's say 10 years. So you effectively end up paying them 20% in management fees, 2% every year. Some of them would charge you for half duration as they're deploying the capital. And so something like that. And it's charged on AUM, which is assets under management. So initially, if you're not calling all the assets and you've just gotten commitments, then your management fee would not be high. So you call them up and you deploy them, then you make your management fees. And the other 20% is the carry, which is carried interest. So that's your interest in that particular deal. When you flip over the deal and you bring the profit, then you take 20% of that profit, which is the carry. So that's how venture funds work, which I think you had a good understanding of. That's how they work. But I just said that for the audience. And so Chamat's opinion was that they were able to deploy $300 million in one go, and it was raised with the 2 and 20 model, saying we're going to invest in tech companies, we'll have to write checks of 2 to 5 million, it's a lot of work, but they were able to deploy 300 million in one go, which was a lot less work, and they felt it's safe enough, it's going to go into real estate. But for their limited partners, it's not very attractive, because a limited partner is saying, this is my high risk and high reward capital, but deploying that capital into real estate meant that you would never get high rewards, right? So the limited partner could potentially feel a little cheated, while at the same time Benchmark was able to make, let's say, 10% on it. Let's say they we don't know their LP agreements, so let's assume that they're charging for only 5 years while they're deploying and managing their capital, and not all 10 years. So they made 10% on it, right? 2% every year. So that's almost 30 million. So if you are going to be making 30 million, it might actually be in your interest to quickly get rid of that money, even if that money is going towards effective use or not.
So, by flipping to the next page, it came to my attention that there was one more thing that made WeWork fail, and Shamat recognized it after WeWork failed. If it quacks like a duck and looks like a duck, then it's a duck, not a tech company. And you just replace the duck with like real estate company or whatever company it is. WeWork is not a tech company, it's a tech-enabled real estate company at best.
Yes, but the sheer fact of the matter, though, is that Airbnb is a very similar company.
Very similar.
Right? The major difference between Airbnb and WeWork is WeWork was an asset-heavy company. Right? So if WeWork would have developed a model which was similar to Airbnb, right? In Airbnb, they go to consumers and say, you keep your assets, right? I, as Airbnb, would be very asset light.
Airbnb is kind of just like, you have your thing, and I'm gonna say, if you give it to me, then I will do the whole third party thing and let someone else rent it. I'll do all of the trouble for you. All you have to do is have a property and, give it to me for some time, and then I'll pay you back a percentage of what they made.
Yes, yes. And I think that WeWork could have looked at a model like that.
They could have had like two different things. They could have had the WeWork certified or something, and then more of the I don't know how to explain it, but more of the Airbnb way.
Like I would perhaps run WeWork the Airbnb way, and then have a separate WeWork Holdings Inc., right, which is a holding company. It buys and leases assets, or it leases and subleases assets. And I would take that into an off balance sheet. So my tech company is completely separate than my asset and holding business, right? Because my CFO sitting in WeWork would optimize for operations and optimize for money coming in. My CFO sitting in the leasing and holding company is going to optimize for interest rates. It's going to optimize for durations. It's going to optimize for currency hedging.
That lets you have two different CFOs.
Lets you have people specialized on that narrow angle, and they optimize for me for that particular.
I think that's exactly what you've done by dividing your company into many different sectors, like
Yeah, 6 different companies. Yeah. So yes. Okay, so let's go into the next aspect of it.
Which I'm pretty sure.
Do you have anything else on Adam Neumann?
Let's see. Oh yeah, there's one thing, but that's not that big. It's just talk to the person who knows about the industry they're in, not like a tech. WeWork, you would have to talk to like a real estate person about why they would not invest in it or why they did invest in it. If you have a real estate company, right, like WeWork,
I think,
and it's tech enabled, you would talk to a real estate person about why it's good or why it's not good to invest in, not a software person.
Exactly. I think, perhaps Adam Neumann should have taken a software engineer with him, because in software, you get very used to dividing things in layers, right? You go ahead and, when you're doing databases too, you go ahead and put different databases. It's called sharding. You take your data and shard it. So you get used to scaling things, right? And I think what investors sometimes do is they get confused, and then they go in even though they're confused. But you said it rightly, the quack of the duck.
Not I didn't say it, Chamath
said it. What that could have helped them is said, we're taking 2-3 different businesses and we're putting them together. Right? Overall, it may taste very lovely, right? But we got yogurt that's coming in, and we got hot sausage that's coming in, right? And we're taking them together, and we're making something, and it's tasting very good, right? That's how we do chicken, for example, right? We take meat, we take yogurt as a marinade, or sometimes vinegar, and we marinate them together, and then we
normally in the industry it's buttermilk.
Yeah, and then we go ahead and cook it. Now, I cannot keep these two things together for longer. They will expire, right? So if I'm doing two things which are two different verticals or two different layers on which I'm doing vertical integration and I'm creating a corporation there, then I have to look at those layers separately, and keep those layers isolated, and let specialists in that division handle that, right? The mistake that they made on WeWork was they made a tech company very asset heavy, even though it's supposed to be a marketplace. And on the other side, the asset equation was run by marketing people who were tech marketing people, who were supposed to be burn as much fuel to take the rocket higher, but you can't burn as much fuel to burn the entire earth up, right? So you have two different types of people and types of thinkers required to run those businesses. But I'm very excited personally. I'm very excited about Flow as a business. I just think that
should learn from WeWork's mistakes.
Yes. And I think one other thing that's happening in the business that Flow is in is that I think we've reached the wave 5 for real estate pricing.
Yeah, but we have to wrap this up soon. So, if you have anything else to say, I have one last thing,
Go
which
ahead.
is Airbnb is less profitable, but also less risky. Airbnb is much more profitable by holding its own assets, but that should be, it started with that instead of starting with an Airbnb model, then shifting over to a WeWork model. If Flow does that, it could be very profitable. It could start by having a low amount of risk, gathering up more money, then going to a more profitable approach.
I like your thinking. Yeah, yeah. That's the timeshare model with people owning those timeshares. Yeah. So Adam Newman, if you get a chance to watch our thing, I think
Very unlikely.
very unlikely, but like if you do, just I think we love what you're creating. I think you need just some structuring there,
Yeah, just
which we're not experts at that structuring.
yep, not at all.
We're just happy to talk through it on our podcast and thereby openly share ideas. But I think getting some experts there and doing that structuring in a manner that it becomes the tech aspect of it, or the tech component and the marketplace component of it, gets isolated from the real estate or asset heavy base out of it, is going to be exciting. All right. So
Now
having done that, we move to our next topic.
next one, not that one. We talked about that already.
Yeah, this is the tech-enabled business that we just talked about, right?
Streaming, yes.
Streaming. Okay, so next item, guys, is streaming, which today is exciting because today I canceled my Disney Plus subscription after watching this. We haven't watched Disney Plus in like 2 months or so.
Yeah, the last, no, actually, we watched it one time in the vacation. One time and one time only.
Did we watch Disney Plus or Netflix?
Disney Plus, we watched like Loki one day.
One day, okay.
Very good film. If you have Disney Plus, I wouldn't recommend buying Disney Plus just to watch Loki. But if you have it already, then I recommend Loki. It's a very fun thing, but you have to have a big mental capacity for it. It's kind of complicated, but very, very good.
So the key thing here is that there are a lot of service providers for streaming.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4,
And this is
5,
their
6,
subscriber churn.
7, 8, 9. 9. Very good amount. Like US is doing great in streaming platforms, except for one thing, streaming overload.
Streaming overload, yeah.
Like,
so let's
it got to a good place, but now it's too much at one time.
do you want to talk about the key parameters here or key variables here? So one variable is called LTV. LTV stands for lifetime value. So that's the lifetime value of a customer that you're acquiring. Your customer acquisition cost is called CAC, customer acquisition cost, right? And your churn is how many subscribers are dropping off, right? So this is a graph of churn, and what this is saying is that 12% of Star's subscribers dropped off
in 1 month.
in 1 month.
Right? If you do the very little bit amount, 12 times 12 equals 144. 1 year, they are dropping their entire database
And
plus 50% of their new acquisitions.
Yes, yes. So
how do they stay afloat? No idea, but they're there.
Yeah, on an average, a customer acquisition cost is about 6 months of subscription value. So I don't think that stars should stay alive looking at this data.
Looking at this data, I feel like it's staying alive, but not for long. As you can see at the very end, their churn rate has gone up. I feel like Stars is dying.
Yeah.
Back in April, it was completely okay. Stars was
Now,
just...
what would you do? Let me ask you this question. If you were the Disney, if you were the Netflix, if you were the Hulu, if you were the Apple TV, what would you do?
I mean, there's a lot of competition, so I'd probably try to pump out as many good movies and special movies, like original stuff that's not going to be on other platforms. And I'm just going to try to get some movies that the other businesses would also have. Like if Disney has a collection of Spider-Man movies, then I would also try to acquire one unique Spider-Man movie. Like, let's say Disney has No Way Home and Far From Home, then I would try to get Beyond Home or something, whatever.
Something like that. Okay, so you would look at content. What I would look at doing is two different things. Again, from first principles perspective, we want to reduce churn. So I might offer people an annual package at a slightly discounted price.
That
Right?
makes sense.
So my churn's no longer monthly.
It's
right?
annually, but
It's annually. I would also sell subscriptions annually. So I will say you just buy it for a whole year, buy it for 2 years, and thereby I get some lock-in, right? Number two, I would do is bring in content that by default is refreshed every day.
seasons, episode series.
No, right now they're focused on seasons and episode series, but seasons and episode series become very, very horribly expensive. But YouTube, look at YouTube, fresh content every day, so low cost of production. You and I are sitting here, with $50 microphones, and we're just producing it on our iPad that, we just owned anyways. Right? So
yeah, you can just make it with stuff. It's like essentially DIY at this point.
So something that I would potentially debate is, hey, why not call up the top 50 YouTubers and tell them, come over to Netflix. I give you a show, but it's a weekly show or a daily show, right? Hey, JCal, come over, put your podcast on Netflix also, and a weekly podcast, and your Netflix podcast would have 20% more content because it's paid, and it'll be 4K, and all of that.
There would be some requirements that you would have to do, but if you fulfill those requirements, we can complete some of your requirements too.
Absolutely, and we can pay you for that, right?
Yeah, like
so
instead of YouTube's model, if your content is good, then we pay you money based on what you made for us. Netflix could do the exact same thing.
Exactly. I think all of these idiots are competing with each other rather than competing with YouTube. And like it's so duh to me. Like, compete with YouTube. Get people to be, they're producing shows at 25 million an episode, right? They could be producing at 2,500 an episode because people could be independently developing and putting it, and their algorithms could be automatically monetizing it, right? And Netflix could, like, even I wish sometimes I had news coming on Netflix. I had a daily comedy show coming on Netflix, right? Like the Tonight Show or something.
Yeah, like
And there's nothing like that.
Like as JCal said, New York Times is very good at doing this. It bundled Wordle, a lot of other things. It's just combine them all together. Some people come for Wordle and stay for the news. Some people come for the news and stay for Wordle, etc., etc. If Netflix has bundled that up with games, Amazon Prime that's just bundled up with normal Prime, and Disney Plus it's I don't know what that's bundled with.
Yeah.
But like Netflix games, I've seen it. There was a game that I wanted. It was on Steam and it was paid. It was called Bloons TD6. Very good game. And it costed like $7 or something. It wasn't that much. And then I looked on Netflix and I saw there was the exact same game, except at the very end it was put Netflix edition, and it was completely free. So I got a little confused about like what's the difference? Is there any real difference between these two? And there was only one difference, and that was that you would not sign into your Bloons TD6 account, you would sign into your Netflix account. Only difference. They just took a game, threw it on their own platform, paid the developer some amount, and there we go.
Exactly. And I think those type of creative thinking needs to come into play if these guys have to survive, because the amount of competition they have, their profits will all be wiped out by competition.
Yeah, Netflix has actually created some really good quality games that are, I think, their own. So they're not just repurposing other people, they're actually thriving in this kind of game industry by some point.
By some point. Okay, you're ready to move to the last topic of discussion, and that's microplastics, right?
Probably I would consider this the most important topic.
Yes.
This is not about economy, this is about health. So
Yes.
depending on how you would value it.
So the core concept in this conversation is that
microplastics in bottled beverages.
Yes, so a liter of water has 240,000 individual microplastic components, pieces in it, and they are so small that they can get into your cells and they can cross the blood-brain barrier, and thereby they can do long-term damage. We don't know, but there is, as Chamath said, that there has to be a non-zero correlation at least, right? Why would we not assume that the amount of effect they do on our body is at least non-zero? Okay. Now, what's your opinion? And then we'll talk about our opinions on this.
My opinion, I feel like this is a extremely dangerous thing about how you have microplastics. We don't know exactly how they affect your brain, but if you look very closely at the screen, Sax is not there. It's going to be so funny when he comes back.
Yeah, so you guys have to watch, okay? So Sax, being Sax, comes in later with drinking a bottle of water, one of the plastic bottle of waters that these.
He's just like, I miss, I wasn't here. You were talking about science, so I left. He stood there just enough to make a to know how to make a comment on it.
Yes.
And then he reappeared at the perfect time.
At the perfect time, yes.
No, Sax, what do you think about it? And then here's him drinking a bottle of water.
Okay, so something that we understand out of this is that microplastics are bad. They get into your blood and there's no way to diagnose them.
Yes.
And there are just too many of them in every bottled water. So let's avoid bottled water from plastics. So we in our house are using glasses to drink, and I think
we have some glass bottles downstairs.
We have glass
1 liter glass bottles. We still have plastic, but we're trying to remove it currently. I mean, we've been removing plastic for a pretty long time, but we still kept the thick plastic bottles. I don't know if we should remove them, but I feel like we probably should.
We probably should. Now, coming to David Friedberg's point here, David Friedberg said that the average gross domestic product for some of these countries is $13,000 a year, and that's why plastics are important, because they produce that low cost way of carrying beverages. And he says we can implement glass in America because of the dollar difference. We can afford it, but they can't afford it. What are your thoughts?
So I feel like glass is reusable. Theoretically, if you pay the $1 at first, then you wouldn't have to pay the $1 all the other. Then you wouldn't have to pay the 20, 10 cents all the other times. Eventually, it'll start being cheaper to have one glass bottle. Like you could, essentially, fountains. We have them already. Just placed at some area. Have everyone you'll have some glass bottles. Have a return the bottle, get back your money or something policy, or just say come back with the bottle and we'll give you a refill. We'll just take the bottle back, we'll give you a new one. It'll be discounted because you brought a bottle back. So you can have the bottle with you. Next time you come back, we'll just give you a fresh bottle, refill your old one.
I'll tell you that's exactly what used to happen in India before the PET bottles or the plastic bottles came in. You would go ahead and drink a Coca-Cola, which used to be thumbs up back then. You will drink that in a glass bottle, and there was a metal cap on it. So you take the cap off, you drink. All the metal had some kind of plastic and rubber on the inside. So I don't know how much of that leached, but maybe not that much, right?
If it's going to be rubber, then nothing at all. If it's going to be plastic, probably orders of magnitude less than 240,000.
Yes, because it's on cap and there's an air gap there. And then those bottles would go back to the bottling plant. They'll get washed and they'll get refilled. Okay. Now, people in their sane mind decided that wasn't something good and they didn't want to do it. And
they'll just convenience, I think, but I don't think it was actually that convenient.
Yeah, I don't think so. It was that convenient.
You just
But
created a bunch of waste.
you created waste, and if people who created that plastic in the first place realized two important truths about it. Number one truth, that it was a waste product and a byproduct of crude, and they were able to dump it and get people to adopt it. Number one. Number two, let's assume, and I'm just being a devil's advocate here, let's assume that there were genuinely people who were doing that, who was creating that, knew that this will cause more health problems down the line, but that will help increase the medical industry's profits. Then wouldn't they be inclined to say, let's feed everybody across the world water and beverages in plastic, let plastic get all into their bodies, let them be overweight, let their kidneys fail and livers fail, and I'm going to give them really expensive medicine after that. And uh, so I'm playing the devil's advocate. I'm not saying all humans are that evil and we will have something like that.
But possibilities exist. Humans have a naturally intrusive, most humans naturally get intrusive and greedy minds, so possibilities.
Yes.
Not pointing any fingers, don't know even where to point the fingers at, but possibilities.
But possibilities, right? And now we realize that some countries have been more protective of their population. Because if you're running a country, you're governing, your job is to actually manage your
Yeah, Finland. I don't know that much about Finland, but it gives free education, all levels.
France,
France, they banned packing fruits and vegetables in plastic.
yes, and when we went to France, we saw that yogurt came in glass bottles.
Bottles.
Yeah, small little glass bottles. Over here, it comes in flimsy plastic cups. A, it tastes so much better in those glass bottles. B,
I would expect that because plastic, you have that scraping sound, and it probably just it feels worse. But if you're drinking it in the glass bottle, if you're eating it from a glass bottle, it feels more exquisite.
Exquisite, yeah. And similarly, milk used to come in glass bottles.
Yeah, I remember we went to like Toronto or something, and we got just a nice chocolate milk that came in a nice glass bottle.
Nice glass bottle.
And it tasted so good.
And the only thing that needed to happen on those glass bottles were they needed to be sent back and washed and repacked and sent back and washed and repacked. But we, in our right minds, decided that plastic was too cheap or too affordable or whatever people decided. And they decided not to just take the glass back and repack it. And that could lead to a huge amount of health issues coming over. So and from a perspective of, hey, cheap countries can't afford it, I think cheap countries or the developing countries lose the most from it too. Okay, in North America, we may use a plastic bottle once and throw it away, so it's environmental pollution, but we're not getting hurt as much from it. But in those countries in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, in India, people use the same PET bottle again and again and again. So, and
you can imagine how much it would leach the next time.
And the third time, and the fourth time, and the fifth time, all this.
Because if you look at why it leaches, it's because it's a very large chain. When you create a very large chain, it's bound to break. So it breaks, and that little break point doesn't cause that much damage to the structural ability of the bottle. But then that leaches.
More and more pieces of the chain keep breaking.
Yeah, it leaches into your water. But now, look, if this is a chain, it had two endpoints, and it broke, let's say, here. That breaks into two pieces, and now those pieces are more vulnerable.
More vulnerable.
Now, compiles again, using it a second time, third time, fourth time, you could imagine it would be like 240,000 on the first go.
One more point that I want to make here, right? Holistically, we may save $50 a year at the grocery store because instead of things getting packed in glass, they got packed in plastic.
Yep.
Right? But we will have to pay $5,000 more in medical bills and lose 50,000 worth of our quality of life just because we kept eating out of that damn plastic, right? So I think those are I think David Friedberg's completely wrong here. He should value those factors as well, and also value the factor that glass is so much more reusable. And if there was not,
And then I'm pretty sure when Shaman said, "What about cans?" he was just like defensive at that point. He's like, "Well, you could use cans, but it would be more expensive." I feel like cans are cheaper than plastic bottles at this point.
but I would personally not want to use aluminum cans because they would.
Yeah, they would have that coating on the inside, but if we
No, if they don't even have the coating, they still are just pure aluminum. Aluminum is also known to accumulate in your brain and cause Alzheimer's down the line.
yeah,
So I would so strongly prefer reusable steel bottles because those will be the best thing.
yeah, if we want a soda, we could just go down to Mucho Burrito, get a Jarrito. Those come in nice glass bottles with a metal lid.
With a middle lid, yeah.
Like, and it's not even, it's not because they want to help the environment or anything. It's just because it looks better.
Looks better, tastes better, right? I mean, at the end
Yeah,
of the
those
day, you
sodas
don't want to
are
keep eating plastic, right? If
like,
there's just so much of plastic coming in your mouth, the taste is actually hurting, right?
yeah, and in my opinion, I feel like it even tastes better than a Coke. So I would even prefer drinking it.
Yeah, and here's France bans plastic packing for fruits and vegetables. All right, so with that, any last minute thoughts?
Yeah, I had that one thing about what if you had a very thin sheet of stainless steel, Pac-Man round. If you get it thin enough, it could be like aluminum foil, except instead of being crunchy and flimsy, it could be more like cardstock. And you could take that, wrap it around, and then because it wouldn't be structurally stable enough, wrap that in plastic. Plastic would be the whole structural frame, and metal would be the whole keeping the food
That's a
safe.
phenomenal idea. I might even think of something to do with bronze, for example, because bronze is known to provide antibacterial capability to water or copper. I don't know if it's bronze or copper, and have a very thin layer of that inside a Tetra Pak, for example. Tetra Pak is that multi layer packaging. And today, even Tetra Paks are pretty bad because the inside one is very thin plastic, and this is not.
And what happens when you make a durable thing thinner? It becomes weaker. What happens when plastic is weaker? It leaches more.
It leaches more, and the ones inside may not be as BPA safe or BPB safe, also, right?
Yeah.
And
And if you just look about it, a Tetra Pak is just essentially a bunch of layer of things. You have paper for the outside, a thin sheet of, I think, foil or aluminum, whatever, I don't know, but some metal for structurability. And then on the inside, you have a small layer of plastic so that it doesn't soak through the layers.
and you're saying is replace that plastic with some kind of metal.
Yeah, just, I don't think you need anything but paper and metal. Put a small stainless steel around it, right? And then put a small plastic around it, right? And the plastic could be not a plastic, a paper around it. And you could have the paper go up and make a seal, right?
Yeah, because the metal can cramp down and make a seal too.
So you could have a small bit of metal and then a very small outlet, like a kind of open can. And then you could have a small layer of paper over it. You could just stab your straw in, and it would push the metal down, and it would break it open.
So apart from this idea, what else do you have? Is there anything else, or we can call it an end of this particular podcast?
Let's see. Yeah, we're all done.
So thank you to our audience for watching us. Our goal here is to simplify some of the stuff that these four guys are talking about, make it more digestible, look at opinions where we think they would have missed, and provide more details on things that are complex in nature.
Yeah, we're just simplifying it all.
We're simplifying it all. Thank you so much for watching. Do you want to say something to end it?
Just thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please consider subscribing.
Thank you so much.